Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for the day 2 of India ConTech Summit. We have a pretty jam-packed agenda for today. And the first session here is going to be about selling to India, which focuses on how global construction technology companies approach the Indian market. Speakers will share lessons on product localization, pricing, partnerships, and navigating a complex and fast-moving customer landscape. Next, we would have Building with India. This session looks at how international construction firms and technology leaders are working with India across design, R&D, and global delivery models. It will cover practical approaches to building teams, setting up centers of excellence, and long-term collaboration. So, as a quick introduction to us as the organizers, this has really come together from three different parties. The first is C-Tribe, which is an organization and community for the Indian built environment that helps in nurturing and accelerating innovation, tech development, and digital transformation. Chaitanya is one of the co-founders of this organization, and they are a super active community. So if you'd like to be a part of this organization, please reach out to Chaitanya, and he would be more than happy to involve you with this community. Next, we have Bragan. He writes a newsletter called as Last Week in ConTech, which gives a weekly summary of what's going on in the innovation and construction tech sector and really helps us to understand what the trends are, but also what are the adoption best practices and how we can actually start to deploy these on construction sites. Finally, about myself, I am Siddhant and I run Constructing Tomorrow, which is a media platform producing content at the intersection of construction, emerging technologies, and also the new evolving careers that are shaping our built environment. So for all three of us, we really came together to put this India ConTech Summit. And we also believe that the Indian ecosystem and the Indian context specifically is now reaching at an inflection point. So just to kind of give a recap, in case you missed it, we had our day 1 last week, and we had two major sessions, which was scaling globally from India, where we heard a lot from some of the startup founders, which are based in India but are scaling globally. And the second panel was about the venture perspectives on India. So in case you missed it, there are links on LinkedIn, YouTube. You can take a screenshot, scan the QR code just for easy access. Next up is the market map of some of the new companies that we're seeing in the Indian ecosystem. And this was prepared and compiled by C-Tribe. So if you want to take a look at these, please go to the LinkedIn profile of C-Tribe and you will find this. So as for the agenda for today, we will start with panel 1, which is selling to India, where we will hear from some of the leading leaders of big construction tech giant companies. And this session is supported by AEC Tech Jobs. After that session, we would have some time for Q&A as well. So make sure you start putting your questions in from as you go through the live sessions. Next, we will have Aid, who will talk about some of the AI agents and how they're using it as site assistants, specifically from WhatsApp, to do some of the mundane tasks, which takes usually a lot of time. And after that, we would hear from our panel 2, which is Building with India, specifically on how some of the global construction companies from the West are using India to set up global excellence centers. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Bragan, who would be moderating the panel 1.
So, hi everyone, and thank you, Sid, for that introduction. So, our panel 1 is going to be selling to India, and this session is very much focusing on how global construction technology companies are approaching the Indian market. The reason why it's so important to understand and to really learn from these companies is because the Indian market has its own context. You can't just transplant products that have worked in the US or the European market to the Indian context. You need to be able to adapt the products, tailor the pricing, but also understand the nuances of what is a very fragmented, biased landscape. So we're really excited because today's panel brings together sales leaders from places like Hilti, Trimble, Nemetschek. So all of these are companies that have decades of global technology experience and strategies for how they've built in India, including their presence, their value proposition, and their partnerships. Now, before I kick it off, I do want to thank our panel sponsor, which is AEC Tech Jobs. So they're sponsoring today's session because they believe there's a structural problem in the industry that most people ignore. And the reason what they're thinking about is that the best software companies building for this space struggle to reach the right talent. And the best talent in the industry rarely discovers those companies early. That gap slows hiring, it slows growth, and it also slows adoption. So AC Tech Jobs have built a job board and a hiring platform to fix that. With 25,000 monthly page views and 6,000 monthly active users, it's a focused distribution engine that puts software companies directly in front of professionals who understand the industry and actually get the tools that are being built for it. So if you're building software for this space or just planning to grow your team this year, they've launched their company portal and are accepting founding members to help connect you with the right talent to supercharge your business. Now, back to the panel, we're going to be unpacking what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what lessons can be applied to scale in a complex, fast-moving market like India. Now, I'd like to introduce our panelists and bring them to the stage. So first, we have Harsh, who's the VP of AECO Direct Sales, so AECO Direct Sales for Trimble. We have Dhaval, who is the General Manager and Managing Director for Hilti Technology Solutions in India. We also have Sankar, who is the Head of Marketing for the Indian subcontinent at Nemetschek Group, but he is running a bit late and will be joining in just a moment. But thank you both so far for joining. And just to kick it off, and the first question for today, I just want to ask you, when selling to India, why and how does local presence matter? And for your companies, at what point did it go from it's a nice to have a local presence in India to, okay, it's critical. We need to build our team in India. So I'll just pass it over to you, Dhaval, to answer that first, and then we'll move around the room.
Sure. Thank you, Bragan, and thank you everybody for joining. It is great to be part of this group. To answer your first question, the India technology construction space, a strong local presence isn't just an advantage. It is actually a strategic necessity that directly determines whether the product can scale or not. The industry has operated with high complexity, fragmented stakeholders, and also regional specific compliance requirements. As a result, a credible, trustworthy experience is more important than just the product features. Construction companies in India make decisions based on long-standing relationship. They expect the technology partners to be physically available, not only during the pre-sales demo, but throughout the subsequent phases. Local presence signals commitment, reliability, and skin in the game. Without that, even a strong product would struggle. Yeah? So if I have to draw a line, Bragan, it would be nice to have if you are building initial awareness, but absolutely critical from that point onwards when you get into scoping, implementation, post-production support, etc. Yeah? Software companies don't win deals. Yeah? Your local teams do. Your product can open the door for you, but your local presence will earn the trust that is required to close the deal and then subsequently scale.
Yeah, no, thanks for that answer. And then Harsh, what's your perspective on this question as well?
Thank you, Bragan and AC Tech. I think the way I see it, I agree with what Dhaval said. The local presence is something we need to. Is not a choice, or not an option. I think we need to think from a perspective that how the local market behaves, especially if we look India, right from going from a low level tier to a high tier market where the enterprise level engagements, it is pretty much driven on relationships. Look at and how these relationships goes into multi-layer engagements at the technical level, at the procurement level, at the finance level. When you look at the overall life cycle of the project, then it requires high touch onboardings and the change management. And at the same time, uh, we can't ignore the fact the government is spending a lot onto the local infrastructure building. So if you are an intentional organization to build and to contribute to the regional infrastructure growth, then it cannot be an option. You need to make an intentional choice. So when you say when selling in India, how does local presence matter? It matters a lot because of all these factors. And nice to have a critical, I think pretty much aligned what Dhaval said, that when you're entering, if you just want to have nice to have kind of a stuff which you don't want to focus and don't believe into the long term uh, investment in the growth, and especially uh, the high speed growth market like India, uh, we need to see that if the volume is substantial, uh, then it makes all the sense to have that investment strengthened rather than just keeping it nice to have it. That's the way I put it. So rather than thinking India as an export market, we need to consider that as more as an operating market.
No, thanks for your perspective. That makes a lot of sense. India needs its own strategies and perspectives. And I think, going on to our next question, which is a little bit more on the market differences in India. So India has a very large informal contractor ecosystem and kind of specific constraints associated to that. So things like low connectivity, device constraints, also multilingual requirements. So how do you think about that when bringing your product to market without degrading the core value? So some of the India perspectives versus what your global product has. I'll hand it over to you, Harsh, to answer quick first.
Yes, I think it's a very diverse, quite a diverse factor. So when you, I think from the Trimble's perspective, how basically we look at it, uh, there is a digital world and there is a physical world, right? Uh, how basically Trimble is trying to basically bring the ecosystem together, that how do you basically transpose your digital world into the physical world, and for that the connectivity between your software ecosystem, your planning and design, and how basically it goes onto the field. um, that's the first level of connectivity. So to make the I think digital and physical reality happens. And when you talk about this thing, because India has a diverse set of factors which needs to be considered, it's like offline and online mode. So you need to have systems developed in a way where you can basically work on offline and then basically define the workflows. When you go online, it basically pass on the data from one to another side, and not only between like only in the digital form, but when you need to basically transpose, then do you have that devices which is rugged and still flexible to support the local environment. And local environment, when I say in terms of the diverse atmospheric stuff, that at some place it is too cold, some place it is too high. So these are the kind of a localization support is needed. As far as multilinguals are concerned, maybe that I'm not seeing that as a major challenge, because by and large we have been able to mitigate that portion in the global environment. But I think in terms of customizing this workflow and with the kind of environment we deal with in the diverse, right from north to south and data exchange, that's what basically our focus is. So productivity never remain a challenge. And support system, a lot of people use Android systems here. So I think mobile is the great power in terms of accessibility. So I think majority of our platform, we try to ensure that they work with both the systems and leverage the true power of the mobile and reduce the dependency on high-end infrastructure. So the core value is about, I think, in my opinion, accurate positioning. So I think better infrastructure, project visibility, and the coordinated workflow. So we are truly able to bring this digital and physical world together. So that's how basically we see that making infrastructure a reality to bring the ecosystem together.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, Harsh. And then Dhaval, what was your perspective on that?
I think this was excellent input from Harsh. So from Hilti's estimate, we think the Indian construction ecosystem, roughly 80 to 85% of our workforce operates in fragmented, informal contracting structure with varying digital maturity and also very, very dramatic variances from region perspective. For a software product to succeed, it is imperative that we work with the realities. And some of the realities are limited connectivity, shared devices, device language, and needs without compromising on discipline and data integrity of your core product value. At Hilti, the customer centricity is in our DNA, and that also influences our approach. When we start a product development, simplicity is at the forefront. Yeah. And early on, we adopt some design principles that are also coherent with this particular requirement. I'll give you a few examples. So our design is taking into consideration the intermittent connectivity. So we never design for a perfect connectivity. Offline first is embedded in the architecture. So our core workflow never breaks. And then the data consistency is maintained through controlled sync logics. We optimize for low-end device. Harsh also mentioned about Android first. So effectively running even on a low memory device is very much important. We use principles like minimum data usage and a lean UI framework, obviously supporting gesture-driven navigation for workers who are not tech comfortable. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing when it comes to language is not just focusing on translation. So our focus remains on operational clarity, use iconographic and visual flow to make workers overcome this barrier, both from a literacy and also digital experience. So localization, field terminology, adopting the language that the contractor uses on the site is actually more important than just literal translation. If I summarize, success in India is not about building a lighter version of your product. It's about designing for real-world constraints while preserving the discipline, reliability, data integration of your core value proposition. That is very important when we approach this problem. And we also find that when it is done well, the product actually becomes not only usable, but also indispensable, both in formal and informal contracting systems.
Yeah, that makes sense, Dhaval. And just diving into that a little bit deeper. So are you saying that for kind of your India-specific strategy, your tech team is adding kind of these minimum data usage requirements and these device considerations just for the Indian market? Or is that something that's been on the global roadmap, so it also works for the Indian market? Or is it in the India-specific strategy?
I think it's a great follow-up question. So our strategy for product development is always global first. So the core value proposition is also available to all our global customers. But at the same time, we are also very mindful of the local needs. And every region, every country will come with its local constraints, local regulatory requirements, and also architectural needs like we just discussed. So when we develop a product, while we focus on our global requirements, when there is a go-to-market strategy for a particular region or a country, we are also mindful to incorporate that as a layer on top of what is also available for our global customers.
Okay, no, that's really great context. And I guess moving a little bit more to the go-to-market strategy. So in terms of your go-to-market strategy for India, what was the specific customer profile that actually provided you with the first repeatable revenue motion for your organization? So I'll pass it over to you, Harsh, just to answer first.
So Trimble deals with a diverse set of customer profiles. So I think not very easy to answer in one particular way, but if you look at primarily from the AECO point of view, this is architecture, engineering, and construction, then uh, I would say engineering and contractors, like engineering organization as well as the organizations who are into the actual construction, who are playing. So, and primary reason of this because they're working on two important milestones: time and cost overrun. And I think the greater the stickiness they're able to get in terms of delivering their project, I think that's where I think we are seeing a lot of positivity across. And the another set of customers which we have seen who are serving the global markets, sitting in India. So I think so that's a repeatable play where I think the global demands are being served from India and some of the Indian projects where I think that stickiness is being created
Think
symbol in India.
Yeah, I think just following up on that, Harsh, is there a different requirements for a India specific customer? So someone who is building Indian projects versus someone who's building for overseas projects. So for example, a global center of excellence that's based in India. Is there a difference in what that customer needs?
Oh, absolutely. I think it is all about structures and non-structured way of doing this stuff. So when we look at the global requirements, and especially our customers who are serving the global requirement, they have a very structured set of information to be delivered when they're delivering a project. And those are, I think, uh, which is pretty much streamlined. But when you look at the Indian environment, I think every infrastructure we are building, it has got its own requirement, and especially in terms of number of people. It's going to serve that infrastructure is going to serve is way too different compared to what in any other part of the globe. So the requirement definitely differs, and I think we need a lot of customization and a product which is more flexible and adaptable to take care of those requirements. So that's where I think the major difference comes in. And I think more the solutions which are agile, able to take any kind of local requirements and I think embrace it with the ease. That's where we see the major difference comes in, and probably because of the global product lineup, the way Trimble is delivering, it helps us. And that's where I think I always believe in like creating the stickiness, and that's where when the most complex projects where I think the requirements are way too different from a very standardized way, we're able to serve both kind of requirements easily.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Harsh. And then over to you, Dhaval, just on both of those points of what was the specific customer profile that gave you the first repeatable revenue motion, but then the second one of do you notice a difference in how you sell or kind of your product adaptation for the Indian market, like building for the Indian market versus the Indian market building for the overseas market?
Certainly. I think we also realize very clearly that in India, the construction tech ecosystem is extremely heterogeneous. So identifying a repeatable revenue motion requires focusing on customers, in our view, primarily on three conditions. So one is the digital readiness, the operational complexity under which we are finding a use case, and a clear ROI visibility for our customers. For us, this is the first truly scalable and repeatable motion comes when we have very specific customer profile. If I have to drill down a bit on this one, so the customer group that we would focus on who has clear ROI visibility, have immediate operation pain points. They have a high willingness to adopt a structured workflow. Their capacity for standardization across multiple projects also exists. And finally, non-negotiable is a leadership commitment for digital transformation. I think this combination allows us to move from a one-off win to a repeatable, scalable, or multi-project revenue engine. When it comes to building, so the engineering competency exists, and it is very much already recognized globally. Whether it is building for India or building for the globe, I think the engineering competency exists. What every company needs to focus on is awareness of the reality of the construction industry in their respective region. So understanding the pain points and how our customers actually operate in a particular environment is the most critical topic. And then I think the engineering part could be managed much easier. So in my view, that is something that leads to a successful execution.
Yeah. Have you noticed a different willingness to pay between the segment that's building for Indian projects versus building for overseas project? Like, is there a difference in that? Like in their budgetary expectations or that pricing expectation?
Most certainly, yes. And I think it is not India versus the globe, but it is also very specific to every country. The willingness to pay is actually, in India, people often have this misconception that it is very much requiring a cheap solution, which is not the case. I was very much happily surprised to find this. It is not about that. It is more intentional, value-oriented discussion. The customers are asking, will this product solve the problem? Will my frontline use it? And then they are also having a willingness to pay. On top of that, one extremely important customer behavior that we also recognize, and we are mindful of that, is in India, the businesses would like to have a predictability in their investment cycles. So no surprises. They know what they are signing up for, and they know the value that is required to be delivered, and that is the focus discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, a follow-up question just to ask both of you as well is something that's always a consideration is the ability for Indian firms to build themselves, just given the deep talent pool in terms of software talent that is present in the region. And I know some startups have mentioned that is always an ROI calculation. It isn't just, can we use your product? It's like, hey, do we actually have the capability to build this product ourselves? Is that a consideration or a navigation that either of you have found when selling your product, proving ROI in terms of what you can bring, but then them looking at it and going, hey, given the deep talent pool and the cost of talent here, do we have the capability to build that in-house? Is that something either of you have seen? I'll give it to you, Harsh, first.
Yes, as part of, when we are defining a GTM, the first and foremost, what are we serving for, right? The serving is, I think, the life cycle of the project, right? Look at the cost of the project, and then construction is very fragmented across the globe, and every time when you go to point, the ROI is being seen only in that particular specific discipline. But the way I think most organizations are defining how many areas we are touching or impacting across the life cycle of the project, and that's how the pricing or maybe the ROI needs to be calculated, right? If I've been able to save 3% over what I used to spend across the life cycle of the project, I think that's the real value and ROI. Am I gonna be on budget, on time? I'm gonna align my resources properly. This and probably wastage, lean construction, more manageable. I think inventory management. Those are the steps. If we are able to touch base and impact in some manner, that is the real ROI calculation, and that is where I think the leadership mandate becomes much more critical. That when we are moving from a conventional way of working then to a true digital solutions, then how it impacts our long-term value proposition in the life cycle of the project. So I think that is the primary strategy. However, I think we need to deal with every phase, right? And then there are different means and mechanisms through which I think the solutions being tailored, that are we catering only to that specific phase of the project. So then the product gets tailored. There are different versions which serves to different phases. That's the way we need to look at it. But by and large, I think the life cycle of the project and how much impact it is making.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And Dhaval, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, the only topic I want to add was to your direct question about whether the customers are actually getting themselves involved in building a solution. I actually experienced that the customers are more interested in running their core business. That is where their expertise is, and that is where their focus is. But in very a few cases, they also intend to build, but that is primarily coming from a lack of confidence on their technology partners. So if they see there is a risk, if they also see that there is a lack of service to efficiently support their business when their needs arise, that is where the businesses are actually taking steps to evaluate if that can be done in-house. Otherwise, they would rather focus on their core business. And this is something for the construction tech companies to also be mindful. The solution has to be thorough, not only from the product feature, but also from the support aspects to really create an impact for their respective customers.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, moving it on the same tenant, from a partnership and channel ecosystem perspective, are there specific partnerships that have materially accelerated your reach in India, like being like training institute, specific government initiatives or partners and resellers? And if so, what role do they play in helping you enter and grow in the market? I'll give it to you.
Sorry, Bracken, we lost you for a bit.
Yeah. So I'll just repeat the question. So it just was around partnerships. So were there any partnerships that have materially accelerated your reach in India, such as training institutes, government initiatives, partners or resellers? And if so, what roles did they play?
Yeah, perhaps I will go first and pass it on to Harsh. For Hilti, our model is fundamentally direct. We approach our customers directly, but as we scale our digital and software offering, our ecosystem partnership becomes critical enabler, not from a selling perspective on our behalf, but for accelerating adoption, integration, and customer value in a complex construction environment. So that is, I think, for Hilti, a different lens with which we see our go-to-market approach.
Yeah, and then you, Harsh?
Yeah, from India's point of view, I think we deal in a hybrid model, and I think partnership also of different types. So the first partner. So when I say hybrid model, when there's a volume play and there's a value play. So product which gets adopted to a certain degree, I think it becomes easy to channelize through our partner ecosystem, right? Because we are building a community, and I think it becomes serviceable, and I think there is more acquaintance and acceptance around that. The service model also becomes better, then it becomes more volume. But I think the products which are niche, advanced, and that requires a higher degree of enablement and support and onboarding in the beginning, that's where I think we deal in direct. But the fundamental remains is the capacity and capability, right? So build the capability, that's where, and that requires a higher focus initially, needs to be direct. Once the capability is built, then we're talking about capacity. That's where we are going on the volume stuff. And then the different partnership model comes in enablement, building a community, I think working with the grassroots level, and that is where I think network with the major education sectors, how we are dealing with them, that every year how many engineering students are coming, and they they need to be digitally enabled and they need to be given the exposure. So I think that's another level of a partnership. And then the partnership on the developer side of it. So it's not only one solution which suffices the need of the industry. In fact, there has to be a core interoperability options needs to be worked. As I mentioned, hardware and software from one discipline to another discipline. So that's where we call as the system integration partners. So the solutions are pretty much like works like a platforms which enable these system integrators to work and delivers the solutions on top of it. And Dhaval mentioned a while ago that there are a lot of customers, primarily they deal in their core business areas, but to serve and cater to their local requirements, they are building up uh, their own products on top of the core platform. These are the different partnerships uh, which are there at the tiered level. So one is on the business side, but another is on the enablement side and accessibility side, and that really works in a holistic manner.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think just shifting a little bit more to the sales cycle and how that's worked for India, given that you are a global company, how have you adapted your sales cycle for India? Is there, a typical deal cycle or procurement behaviors or milestone structures that have been structured differently for this region? I'll give it to you first, Harsh.
There are two types of so sales cycle. Like it differs. It depends. Like how it is. Is it the income? Is it inbound or is it the outbound? Right. If it is inbound, then naturally it is gonna be on the lower side of it, and that totally depends on the stickiness and the acceptance the solutions have had in the market, right? So there's enough demand. And the other side, the outbound, where the demand needs to be generated. There's certain sectors where I think the acceptance is very high, and naturally there's a lot of demand coming. There, I think sales cycle is pretty shorter, but especially on the complex project and where I think those sectors have not been digitally enabled so far, then there's a lot of enablement goes, there's a lot of education goes, and that's where I think the sales cycle can go anywhere from 3 months to 9 months even. It totally depends. And as I said, like the sectors which we deal, we talk a lot of digital. However, I think the adoption of digital still varies from sector to sector. And if you are entering into a sector where the enablement and the education is there, the awareness is there, but the implementation methodology is not present. It is just being acquired. They want to understand more that how unique their requirements are. I think their sales cycles generally get slow, and that's what I call outbound.
That makes sense. And then Dhaval, how is the perspective for Hilti?
Quite similar as well. For us, India requires a very adaptive sales cycle. So it is not just duration, but also structure and sales stakeholder management. If I break this into three different motions, so typically the three motions that we see a faster business outcome driven cycle, typically with a private developer who is more structured multi-layer decision cycles, which are involved in EPCs, and a very rigorous procedural procurement cycle when it comes to public sector. So in private developer or a mid-size contractor, decisions could be typically between 2 to 3 months, where the ROI is clear. There is a top-down sponsorship, even from the CXO level, very strongly supporting the digital transformation. Maybe the on-site pilots could be accelerated to build trust. The milestone here is the pain point mapping. It is very, very sharp. A pilot success could actually get into very quickly a commercial alignment. If you're dealing with somebody like a EPC, the cycle could be a bit longer, maybe 4 to 6 months, because there are multiple aspects on this. Right? So the evaluation of the solution goes through multiple teams like operation, planning, finance, site teams, etc. Adoption workshops also have to have a multi-project rollout plan because then that becomes the key milestones. Finally, when it comes to public sector, there is no timeline guidance over here because that is the longest, driven more from a compliance, technical qualification, very documentation heavy, audit, e-tendering style. Milestones are primarily pre-qualification, technical acceptance, etc. But also a post-award audit. So those cycles are the longest. We also find flavor when it comes to India regionally. For example, if you are dealing with a company in the northern part of the country, there is more relationship orientation. West is more process driven. South is more consensus driven. So our approach needs to adapt to the stakeholder that we are discussing with. And there we actually go with custom approach in many cases. But the foundation over here, which is building trust early on, demonstrating your capability, and also focusing only on your value delivery, I think that remains non-negotiable from Hilti perspective when it comes to dealing with any of these classifications that I just explained.
Yeah, and I guess diving a little bit deeper into the regional differences, that's quite interesting. So how do you kind of see India in terms of the buyer behavior across the regions? Because I think you said the North was more relationship driven, the South is a little consensus driven. So like, could you give us a bit of a breakdown of how India looks from a regional perspective?
Actually, it would not be that straightforward to classify or custom fit regions into a particular line of behavior. This is more of the experience that we observed, and it is also does not kind of tag a particular customer category into one or the other bucket. The critical aspect over here is you should be really aware and have a close, trustworthy relationship to also be able to understand what is required from your relationship and how do you navigate through their sales cycle. I think that is more important than stereotyping in one or the other bucket.
Okay, that makes sense. And then a question that I wanted to also ask is just the balance of perspectives between like the global feature release and pushback from Indian customers. So when you do get your global roadmap and a new feature that you've got to push out, how do you balance pushback from Indian customers who may not require this feature update? And then if there have been global features, have there been any that have been deprioritized locally or had to be kind of rethought to local customers as it's been released? I'll start with you, Dhaval.
I think fantastic question. Part of it I already explained when we talked about how we design ground up our solutions. So at Hilti, our global roadmap always gives us scale and consistency. But our solution are architected from onset to adopt for local construction realities. India's environment obviously require us to address the intermittent connectivity issue, regional documentation practices, as well as the diverge digital maturity, which requires features which work reliably on site, not just in ideal conditions. So when it comes to global features, our releases happen. We evaluate it through the lens of every region, and specifically in this question also for India, because our platform has built-in modularity, which we can sequence and selectively enable features. That eases us a situation for us, and depending upon the local readiness, without breaking the global product integrity, we actually take a decision of adoption. This lets us put the customer in a safe zone. We protect their experience while still aligning with the global strategy. Yeah, some of the advanced global features, not necessarily deprioritized, but we also took a call in terms of when do we roll out, depending upon the maturity of your regional requirement. What we intentionally deprioritize, anything that forces our customer to go through a new hardware acquisition, for example, a mobile phone. So that's something that we strongly protect our customer from that kind of thing. But otherwise, we did not find any such major cases where we conflict one way or the other. Mobile first, site first. This is the mantra that we follow, and the balance comes naturally because the architecture supports the local choices, and when we remain globally unified but locally relevant, I think that is the key for the success when we see it for our products.
Yeah, and then Harsh, your perspective?
In terms of global releases and local requirements, way I put it, yes, pretty much our global roadmap is always being defined based on the grounds of information coming across the globes, and that's how majority of the requirements. So we've never faced challenges or pushback on the global releases. Rather, I would say there are intermittent additional requirement which basically comes up that locally or regionally these are specifics which may be helpful, and I think we've done enough to have the local supports and customization, which basically helps in catering to those specific requirements. So that's how like we have been able to mitigate those challenges and meet the requirement what is needed. But by and large, the solutions are being more worked as a platform and have that enablement flexibilities, which at the regional level, even at the client level, if they have super users, they're being enabled and they can tweak and make those things for themselves.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, thank you as well, Sankar, for joining. I know you're running a little bit late, so thank you for joining. Now, the final question that I just want to ask is a very brief, quick question before we jump over to some comments, because we have some great questions coming in, is just if you're someone on the outside looking into India as an opportunity to sell into, do any of you have like a quick kind of understanding or a few pieces of information that they could just really think about on how to enter the Indian market? I'll hand it over to you, Sankar, just to answer that quickly.
Thanks, Bragan. I'm really sorry, folks, for joining in late. To take that point, Bragan, if you have to enter India, I think personalization is very important because specifically when we consider Indian market, for any company for that matter, whether it is in software, hardware, or any of the companies, uh, people here feel the personalization. So it's always important that we personalize the products to the market. We localize it to the maximum possible. And the second point I would make is I think aligning with the vision of the country, because specifically in the infrastructure segment, everything is run by the public sector or the government. So when any of us or any of the technology companies come into India and try to sell to India, it's always important that we align with the local vision, local government's vision, whether it is at the central government or the state governments or even the civil bodies. I think these are the prime important alignment. Third, it's always important to see from a technology perspective whether any of the firms who are supposed to use your products are under vendor lock-ins. So it's always most of the technology companies or most of the companies when they try to shift to a different technology, they always have a misconception that it takes a long route, it takes a long cycle to change technology. It's risky, a lot of the stuff, a lot of misnomers. But I think we should have an open mind to have that open standards in place so that whenever you're selling to India, it's all you can always integrate with the solutions or the customers are using, not become another pain point. So I think these three are the prime most important points. I think we should have. Yeah.
Yeah, and then either Harsh or Dhaval, do you have any perspectives or like anything to add? And once you do that, we'll jump into the questions from the audience.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Anyone entering into the Indian market, in my perspective, the one thing which I think any global company needs to see scalability and flexibility in the solutions, because we are structured in a very unstructured way. That's how we are structured, right? And that is where the scalability. So one side doesn't fit to all. I think that's the approach. So if we have a very process-driven, a very modularized kind of a solution, I think that is something needs to be considered. That how scalable our solutions are. Can they work in different environments? And I think you started your questions multilingual. I think it may apply to some, it may not apply. You go to north, south, east, west, the damp area, the hot areas, so hot areas, too cold, and there is, and sometimes we have challenge in terms of accessibility, in terms of network, and maybe heavy vegetation. So scalability is the one thing which we need to keep in mind. And then we need to keep in mind that India is a volume market, right? What is the volume we are going to deal with? So if it is going to be catering to the regional need and requirements, we need to have a right balance over value versus volume. So I think these are the two things I would say.
No, thank you for that perspective. That's super interesting. So we do have some comments and questions that have come in through the audience. So we'll bring them up now. So if we can just bring up the first question. So I'll just read it out initially, which is Trimble's tech, like robot scanning and high-end hardware, is world-class, but India is still a market dominated by low-cost manual labor. When you're selling to a major Indian infrastructure player, how do you win the argument that a $50,000 piece of hardware is more cost-effective over a 5-year project than simply hiring 20 more surveyors? What is the tipping point for an Indian firm to go fully digital? So I'll direct that towards you, Harsh, as it's probably most relevant towards you.
Interesting, and thank you for asking this. Okay, what is more important, the 10 surveys, or I said in the beginning, the life cycle value of the project? Today, a requirement is not like, can I deliver this project by deploying 20 people, but can I complete this project within the time budgets, with the precision and accuracy what needs to be delivered? So I think the kind of a projects today we are running, it requires precision, accuracy, and on-time delivery, right? I cannot compromise that or anything. So if I'm working in automation, digital delivery mechanism, and if my concerns are cost and time overrun over the life cycle of the project, if I'm not ready to compromise, then look at the savings and the value it brings. So it has its own value, and in your question, I definitely take a note on it, but then look at the complexity and the importance of that project. So if I say in a high-speed rail project, a 1 millimeter accuracy, I'm saying a little more, 1 millimeter is still high in terms of tolerances, but does that make more sense, or putting 20 people and still struggling to maintain that accuracy? So I think it is a question about precision, execution, and cost overruns. That's the way I would put it, to invest in something which brings value over the life cycle of the project, rather than just looking from a different perspective.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If we could bring up the next question. So how can one successfully break into the ConTech go-to-market space in India, considering the slow decision-making processes, high price sensitivity, and resistance to adopting new technologies? Do either of you have an answer to that? So either you, Dhaval, or Sankar?
Absolutely. I can take a shot and then pass it on to Shankar. I think Rohit asks a very, very, very valid question, especially for somebody who is aspiring to get into this market. And the only message that I have is you have to be brutally focused on solving a problem for your customer. Keep your customer in the center, whether you are designing, building a solution, or even crafting a go-to-market strategy. For Hilti, this comes very naturally as this is part of our DNA. And our focus has been laser sharp on construction productivity, safety, and sustainability, which also then defines how we build products and what would be our go-to-market strategy in the respective region, which is also true for India.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'll go on to the next question for you, Sankar, which is which factors or any concerns that you include when you're preparing the roadmap for a new product? And I think it's also, putting that perspective of global roadmap versus local roadmap as well.
Yeah, I think like I said in your first comment, personalization is always important wherever you operate, whether it is in the APAC or India or any other region. So, in terms of planning out a new product, it's definitely, of course, India being the third largest construction market. I think no company will ignore India in their product roadmap for sure. But it's always good to have a very focused or laser focused product roadmap mapped at India as a country, because like Harsh was making a point where we differ from regions and states. So it's always good to have that personalization or any other parameters to be set in the new product launches or roadmap for all global companies or for Indian companies for that matter. So yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we have time for one last question. So we'll just bring up the last question, which is Mr. Harsh very well mentioned of India as an operative market, so rather than a purely as an export-driven one. So with that basis, what structural shifts do global contact players need to make to truly localize their business models here? So I'll give it to, just one of you to answer that question. And after that, we'll probably have to wrap it up. But yeah, does anyone want to take this question?
Do I? I'll take it before I pass it on because here. So first and foremost, like serving the need of the volume, that should be the first way. And I think Sankar mentioned the personalization, right? Serving the local need in the volume. If we want to get into that, these two things, global scalable solutions for volume with very focused solution which helps the customer to solve his business problem, not the technical problem, the business problem. I think that needs to be the focus when we want to get. And when I say operating market, it means because it has a volume, if you are able to get to that volume, then you just don't need to see that this is an option. You need to invest onto it because then it becomes a repeatable play. And I think subscription and the SaaS models are making more sense in the present context, where I think your entry barriers are bringing low, because a lot of people said, hey, this is a price sensitive market. So I think whether you want to go in the CAPEX model or OPEX model, it brings your entry barrier low. You start modularizing to the minimum extent, but at least you have some differentiation, which is focusing on different phases of the project lifecycle. I'm sure it becomes a very profitable outcome if you focus on these 2 or 3 elements. That's the way I put it before I pass on to Sankar or Dhaval.
Thank you. I think that's very well put, Harsh. So, just adding on to what Harsh said, I think specifically when you're talking about the local market, the one concept I always feel missing is mapping out the customer life cycle than the product life cycle. So I think when we sell to a particular customers in a SaaS model or a perpetual models or any other piece, most of the time we are selling product as a value. but we never map the ROI. So I think that's very important. The customer life cycle, throughout his experience of using the product, what is he going to save, or what is he trying to achieve out of using one particular technology. I think that's what we miss telling the customer, which is very important. And that's where I think we say we are more a kind of an operative market rather than purely export driven, or we want to sell our solutions to the Western markets. I think that's very important, having that customer life cycle in mind.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you so much, everyone. So that brings us to the end of the Selling to India panel. And I just wanted to thank all three of you. So thank you, Dhaval, Harsh, and Sankar, and taking the time to present towards us. I also wanted to thank our community sponsors for supporting us during this event. So you can see them on the screen now. And I'll also pass it over to Sid to bring on our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Bragan, for that. It was definitely a great session. And before we move on to our panel 2, which is Building for India, I would like to call upon Krishna to talk about how he is building AI agents to do some of the site assistant works, such as compiling reports, observations, small mundane tasks like that. So over to you, Krishna.
A lot, Siddhant, and thanks for Bragan and everyone else for putting this together. Also, sorry, wanted to thank the panel. I think we heard a lot about India, and it's very exciting to see where India is with construction, and so much so that I am actually based in London right now, but I'll be moving back to Bangalore, which is my hometown. We heard from the panelists how important it is to be there, and I guess this is just me saying that I'm going to be making that happen. So anyway, I'm the co-founder of AID, and I have a few minutes to introduce ourselves. And I think you're going to see that it's a very practical application of what the speaker spoke about. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll sort of like talk you through the story of what we're building. So as you know, construction kind of runs on WhatsApp all over the world, but especially in India. And it's a little hard to run away from this, right? Lots of people have tried to get teams off WhatsApp, but it just doesn't happen. Our whole thesis is that with AI, we should just embrace this and bring the power of this technology to the surface that people are used to using, which is WhatsApp, which means there's no training or onboarding. It sort of knows your format and your workflow at your company. It plugs into your existing systems. It can handle multiple tasks. And the best part about this whole thing is that for our AI agent, you just interact with it like a person on WhatsApp. You message it, you send it sort of notes, videos, photos, so on and so forth. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll give you a sort of full walkthrough of a sample workflow. So imagine that you're on site, you're the site manager, and you're sort of compiling your update for the day. The way our product works is you open WhatsApp, there's a contact, you send it a voice note, you send it photos, videos, whatever you like. Now, under the hood, what we will do is we will look at your template and your requirements for reporting and say, does this update contain everything that needs to be there? We will prompt the person for more info if it's required. And we will also go in and analyze all the visual evidence that's been shared. Now, after that, our AI takes care of the rest. It will analyze all the information that's been shared, put it into a structured sort of report, and then push it to whatever platform you use, whether it's Procore or a local platform like PowerPlay. The other big thing to mention is that in addition to the AI taking this unstructured information that people share, structuring it and saving time, you also have AI looking over updates 24/7. So if there's a safety risk or something that should not be happening, our AI is able to detect it and flag it immediately to your health and safety or your ops team. So this is just one workflow. I'm using sort of a daily site report or meeting minutes, but you can apply this to kind of everything that happens on site, which requires reporting in some form. If we go to the next slide. So we're currently live on a construction site. And as you heard from the panelists, I think the Indian market is very different from the market like the UK, which is why we've made a concerted effort to sort of land and build this with customers in both markets so that it can really understand the nuances of the local Indian market and be able to sort of cater to that. It's being used for multiple use cases. The three that I'd like to mention are meeting minutes on site, snagging lists, site reports, and also inspection reports. If we go to the next slide. So quickly wanted to cover sort of one big insight that I think the panelists spoke about as well. The first is just WhatsApp. WhatsApp is very common, easy to use. Nobody needs to learn it. The second is that with AI, you heard the panelists mention this, you can really customize the solution to what the customer needs, as opposed to old software where you needed to change your processes to what the software does. And that's a very big part of our thesis. And then the final thing is that we're not just, responding to questions that people ask on WhatsApp. We're actually completing the whole workflow. So if you're writing a report, that means analyzing it, writing it into a sort of structured document and putting it into whatever system you need. If we go to the next slide. So anyway, I thought it would be fun for everybody to try a live demo of our product. So if you've got a minute or two, please scan this QR code. I think you should be able to do it from the screen. This will open a WhatsApp chat, as promised, for our product. Send it a message. It will guide you through the whole thing. You can share a few sample pictures or notes from site. Tell it when you're done, and you should receive a sort of structured report showing you how the entire thing works. So anyway, again, I wanted to thank the organizers for putting this together. I think very excited to see where the Indian construction market is at. And hopefully this was a practical application of what you heard the speakers speak about.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Krishna, for that quick presentation. Now, the most awaited panel of the day, we will listen from Atul from DPR, Abhijit from Turner, and Hemendra from Procore Technologies. And I'll hand it over to Chaitanya to kind of give a brief introduction of what the panel is about, and then we will dive into it. Quick note again, make sure you drop your questions in the chat, and we will make sure to cover that towards the end of the session. Over to you, Chaitanya.
Thank you, Siddharth. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining. And thank you for joining this session. So this session is on Build with India. So just to introduce before I introduce the panel, I'd like to talk a little bit about what this session means. So many global construction organizations look at India as a low-cost delivery center or a secondary sales market. But today, the reality is richer. India is emerging as a place to design and R&D new products, run centers of excellence that support global programs, and operate delivery models that combine deep local execution with global quality standards. But that only works when companies solve two hard problems well. First, how knowledge and IP gets transferred without dilution, and how to measure delivery quality across thousands of dispersed sites. So today's panel brings together senior delivery and technology leaders who run those exact functions across India and the US. We'll dig into the operating playbook and use them on how they hire, govern, measure, and sustain high-quality global delivery from India. So now introducing the panelists. First off, we have Mr. Atul Kanzore. He is a renowned name in the construction, technology, and VDC world. Currently a CTO and a member of leadership at DPR Construction, one of the leading general contractors in the US, a technology founding member of CTAI, or the Construction Technology Alliance of India, and also a very passionate cricketer. Welcome, Atul.
Thanks, Chaitanya. Good to be here.
Next up, we have Mr. Hemendra Pal. Hemendra has been building construction tech solutions for 16 years now. First as a group VP for Oracle Construction, leading products like P6, Aconex, Textura, and Unifier, followed by a CTO, CPO position at Think Project in Europe, and now a senior vice president at Procore, leading product R&D. He's also built a couple of construction tech startups in his journey, and is an avid traveler by hobby. Welcome, Hemendra. And last but not the least, Mr. Abhijit Joshi. Abhijit heads operations in India for Turner Technical Services, leading a team of 300 plus professionals across pre-construction, engineering, VDC, and scheduling departments. With over 2 decades of experience in architecture and design and construction, he has been instrumental in driving operational efficiency and aligning delivery strategic priorities for the organization. He also is a passionate cricketer. Welcome, Abhijit. I think Abhijit, you're on mute.
Yeah, hi Chaitanya. Good to see you, Atul and Remendra.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
So we have two passionate cricketers on the panel and a traveler.
Nice.
Great, great. So to get started, I will just kick it off with a simple question. So when you decided to build or scale operations in India, what problem were you actually trying to solve, and why did India make sense at that point, and why does it make sense today? Atul, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I should admit, I mean, our India operation started very opportunistically, Chaitanya. Two of the people, Saurabh, Durga, who were working in our VDC team, wanted to go relocate to India, and we didn't want to lose them. And so it started very opportunistically. But I think, pretty soon, I think we realized that I think India has a lot more to offer than just retaining, Saurabh and Durga. I think what we've built there is pretty amazing. And I think it's pretty crucial to sort of the strategy that we talk about, which is delivering sort of really predictable outcomes to our customers worldwide. So they're playing a very, very crucial role for us right now.
Great, great. Abhijit, maybe you want to go next.
Sure, sure. So I would say our journey was Chaitanya more or less the same. So Turner was into project management way back since 2008. However, in 2016, we launched this new vertical called Turner Technical Services. We started with handful of people, probably three, and started with only two verticals. It was only estimation and VDC, and that time estimation, it was only quantity takeoff. We were never exposed to the costing side of world. However, and we had gradually grown from say handful of people to probably 150 till Jan of last year. Uh, Considering the growing demand of portfolio and the project Turner had, and considering the backlog, there was a demand, and there was a big scarcity of, I would say, technical talent in US. So we made a shift from a task-based services to now what we call is an FTE model, which is a full-time integrated model. Now what is happening with this full-time integrated model is our team members are embedded into projects, and we have now started supporting more verticals like estimators, uh, engineering, procurement, sustainability, and scheduling. So I would say since then we have doubled in size. We are now 300 plus professional, and I think the way India is positioned, I think it is now more like a strategic engine and not a support function.
Excellent, excellent. And I think both these parties come from the construction on field, right? And Hemendra, you come from the digital tech and platform side.
No,
So how is your thing different? If you'd like to share.
Yeah, first of all, great to see customers on this, both Atul and Abhijit. That's great. For us, I was actually fortunate 15, 16 years ago when I was working for Oracle's construction. We started India office because Oracle had a big office, right? That's how it was started. So not only just to have leverage the global talent pool, but also speed. And global customer base, right? So how do you serve global customer base from one location or two locations? And when you have customers in Australia and UK and US, so it's a great advantage to have the team in India. That's how I started way back, and this is the third time repeating the same thing. So we're trying to learn over a period of time, and Procore, the same story. A few years when we started is how do we leverage this biggest talent pool, and especially construction tech talent pool. I mean, no other country, maybe outside US, would have that many trained construction tech professionals, whether it's a BIM or even building construction solutions. So that was the whole starting point. But at the same time, we also look at
as previous panel was talking about it, third largest construction market. Now it has its own challenges, but it's regardless, it's a very large market. So sooner or later, all players would can't ignore this. So those are a couple of examples.
Definitely, I think we are seeing a lot of trend. While we were also doing the research, we were also able to find many companies lining up to come into India. So great opportunity there. So Abhijit, just to kind of jump a little more on deliveries, right? Because I think along with setting up the entity, then you have execution also that is important. So when you're running a global delivery from India, which decisions are kept local and which decisions must be routed to the region of record. So maybe that gives a context of how you are managing what stays where and what happens where. You're on mute. Maybe.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Great question, Chaitanya. So I will share my experience. For us, anything that is related to task execution or production, I think that is where what we are driving from India. But when it comes to contractual authority, client accountability, and commercial risk, that we still keep it to Turner US. In terms of what we do, we have a clear RACI matrix of what does the Indian team does and what does the US team does. So I would say majority my team based out of India. We are involved in the day-to-day execution of either it is estimating, engineering, procurement, VDC, or sustainability or scheduling. Resource planning plays an important part for us, including work management, internal QA/QC, process optimization that is with my team. Technical coordination, either it is with the drawing specification or the defined scope, that is with us. Also, anything that is early risk identification, we then structure it to our US leadership. Most of the things that are taken care by our partners in US, I would say, are subcontractor commercial negotiation, client-facing decision and stakeholder management, and any kind of formal sign-off or compliance related to liability.
Amazing. So you basically are handling a lot of execution on your side while the decision making and the final client-facing things happen there. So
That's
Atul,
right.
just to kind of continue on this, maybe you can add something more if you would want to. And I would also want to ask, how are you maintaining that quality of deliverables? What kind of service agreement that you have with your team here so that you ensure that the outputs are consumable by the US market, by your teams there?
Yeah, so Chaitanya, for us, our team members in our India operations, we construct are very much embedded into the project teams that we have here. So, for example, some of the largest mission critical projects that we are doing in the US right now, we have, close to 45 people that are directly working on that project. So the workflows are defined. I think, like Abhijit mentioned, we have clear workflows. Virtual building workflows that basically describe what is the role of and we describe it really more as an on-site and an off-site team. We want them to really be part of the team. That's how we sort of operate. In terms of, the type of work, the type of deliverable, it varies from project to project. The demands are different, especially some of this mission critical work, very fast paced. The turnaround times are higher. Life sciences sometimes is different. So it varies. But in general, our turnaround time is. There are things that happen overnight. Then there are things, that sort of, maybe happen on a weekly basis. So an example, that comes to mind is, if we were to do constructability analysis on a whole project, 5,000 sheets of drawings, for example, could take a week to do that. So I think the project teams negotiate that. I think sometimes we have to put more people on something that's maybe more urgent. So I think it varies. But really what we want to do is make sure that our teams feel that they're really embedded into the projects and not kind of, this kind of hourly type of a model.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think that go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would agree with Atul, right? I would say till last year, Chaitanya, our iteration rate has gone down last year, because now our people feel more embedded into the entire construction. Initially, it was more like a task based, right? So it was just handing off certain activities. Now it's more accountability, and they see value from their decision made, right? So I think that is a bigger impact on those individuals.
Understood. And Hemendra, on your side, on the product side, how are things different? How are you making sure what gets done here versus what gets done in the main area where the product is consumed?
This is great, and my life is a little easier than both gentlemen here, because we are building solutions and world-class products for our customers. So from day one, we always had this mindset of building global teams rather than back office operations, or it's basically how do you build the world-class teams. Now that there was already a recipe from top-notch companies and Googles and Microsofts and Oracles of the world. Like how do you build those pods? So we always thought about building cross-functional pods to deliver the customer outcomes, whether to focus on a region or focus on a product suite. So more or less all the functions actually, which are end-to-end functions, are present. That's how we envisioned. Now, what I'm talking about is a product development organizations. There are more to do with go-to-market and sales and support. Now, within the product an R&D organization, I would say only a very handful set of processes which are probably governed by, let's say you're working with public sector, and then you have to have a high compliance processes depending upon which country or region it is. Those probably would be excluded, but other than that, it's more or less all functions, whatever is needed from inception to operations, are present in India Development Center.
Just a follow-up, because the other two gentlemen, like they mentioned, that they have their teams, forward-looking, and they're integrated into the project delivery, so they get the context and they're able to catch up. How does that differ for an organization like yourself? Because your developers or engineers also need that context to be able to build the right kind of piece and solution.
Yeah, so when I said it's from day one, we planned it that it is the teams are built in such a way so that they can lead from inception or initiation to operation. So it's not just engineers or QA or the support engineers. It's the product leaders, product strategy, and some of the senior R&D leaders are present in India actually, who relocated, or we large part of their experience they worked in international environment. So we did build the team such a way so that entire pod that is responsible for delivering a product or solution, that is present in India. So that helps us, because yes, let's say for an example, product managers, they travel quite often. They talk to customers, they meet customers. We do spend a lot of time actually on working with customer, collaborating and trying to understand the pain point and how do we bring it to the product. So this helps us have the India teams focus on delivering the customer outcome.
Understood. Perfect. So now I'll just move towards the operating model, just to get your thoughts on that. So what operating model has actually worked for your company? Captive teams, integrated global delivery, something else? And if there is anything else you had tried earlier and did not work, if you could share with the audience. Atul, maybe you could go first.
Yeah, so I think it's the model we have evolved to is more the integrated global teams, Chaitanya. Like I mentioned, our people are directly involved on projects. I gave the example of the mission critical project where we have almost like 40 people working on it. one of the things that we find is that I think the relationships get established with the on-site project teams, things like that. One of the things we have also tried to do a lot is to figure out how do you get because a lot of people want the exposure to the physical project. So we also are trying to figure out the back and forth that can happen between US and India. As you know, the coming to the US has become a little bit of a challenge, but I think we're trying our best to get more people exposed to the job sites that they're working on and things like that. It just provides a very different perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think what has helped us is defining those integrated workflows across the various functions between pre-construction, operations, constructability analysis, all the coordination, everything else. And that has really, I think, what it has evolved to. And I think we want to sort of continue with that. We are making a pretty big push also on the design side currently.
Great. Abhijit, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I would echo what Atul has said. So for us, the operating model that has worked best, Chaitanya, for us is an integrated global delivery model. Today, we operate as a true extension of our US project team, not as a back office, which was, I think, a couple of years back, right? Our team members now are a part of the core activities handled by US counterpart. The only thing I would take away out of them is probably safety related responsibility and the task that is required physical presence that our team is not able to do. But yeah, and I think couple of reasons why it has worked, Chaitanya. It is because it is now a joint accountability, I would say, and it also reinforces a one team culture and not an offshore mindset, which used to happen way back.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I think that is very critical, in today's environment of global capabilities, where the teams are actually able to understand the context of being on the other side and knowing it much better. Great.
Right. And the shift, right, Chaitanya, from a support model to integrated model has significantly, I would say, improved accountability, B, speed, and third, which is more important, is trust with the US counterpart.
Correct. Hemendra, anything you'd like to add?
It's exactly same as what Atul and Abhijit mentioned, that moving from a task focused to outcome focused, it helps a lot in increasing accountability, as Abhijit mentioned, right? It really helps improve the speed or overall velocity because you're not waiting for all kind of decisions, right, from headquarter all the time. And then most importantly, I think there is a human side of it, right? Because when you are hiring rock star programmers or developers or implementation engineers, everybody wants to have the ownership. Everybody wanted to control their destiny, and it's easier to motivate those people basically. So I always looked at it as outcome focused, is what is that we are planning to achieve, and in favor of customer, what are we trying to do, and then everybody gets feels good about it. So I would say it's an outcome focused structure rather than the task focused. That worked well for us. Yeah, initial 10 years, 15 years ago, there was repetitive tasks, like very repetitive cookie cutter approach when you can do the task models, but that probably does not work in the work that requires a lot of creativity, and you're building newer solutions, newer capabilities. So I would say it's moving to outcome focused org structure. That works.
Got it. And are there any delivery functions that scale out best from India, say implementation, support, analytics, QA, R&D in your case? I mean, if you'd like to continue on that.
Yes, I mean, R&D is natural. I mean, all the entire product development, end-to-end product development, that's a quite natural fit. The second one is the implementation or services, as we call it. I mean, in construction, as you know, a lot of bespoke workflows. Every customer probably would have to have certain configuration, customizations, workflows. So implementation goes well very nicely, especially depending upon which regions it is, and it helps. It helps provide the scalability. So I would say those two areas, product R&D and implementation services, are a close fit. When it comes to support or first line of support, when language is a requirement, and then you need to have the relationship with the customers, like very high touch relationship with the customer. That's probably less of a fit, but it's not doable basically, right? But I would say the development and implementation services, those are very natural.
Got it. I think other two have already kind of spoken on a lot on how they are operating. So I'd go on the next one. I think this is something that's very interesting. When you're doing these operations, what kind of metrics are you tracking on maybe a daily, a weekly, a quarterly basis to ensure that the India-led delivery is performing at global standards? Because that's a very key part of delivery. So maybe either one, Abhijit or Atul, anyone who wants to go first.
Sure, I'll go first. So what we have done is, uh, since we moved to an integrated model, right? We have now a playbook in place, right? The process workflow in place, right? So now every individual or team member is aware, right? At what stage what has to be delivered. I think that is, I would say, a bigger chunk. Understanding the expectation. This was not very clear when we were providing a task-based service. There was a lot of rework that used to happen because there was a difference between an expectation, what what the team had, and what we used to deliver. But now I think that has gone away. The other thing, Chaitanya, is we get into a cadence of so the integrated resource has a weekly check-in call every day, or probably twice a week, so that he understands where the need is, right? If he needs to, say, probably push for additional effort, he can then get a support from rest of the team.
Okay. Atul, are there any numbers, any KPIs that you are tracking specifically to make sure that the deliverables are to the standards?
Yeah, I mean, I used to, when I was doing, for example, the MEP coordination process, we used to say, we need to knock out like 25,000 square foot a week. And I think now we are like double that these days, with the global services team that we have. I mean, they're doing amazing work. I think in terms of metrics, I think it varies depending on the service, Chaitanya. I mean, we are doing everything from software development to AI to coordination, constructability analysis. I gave you an example of a sort of a medium to largish project. Has let's say 5,000 drawing set of like architectural, structural MEP. We want to do a decent constructability analysis, not just like drawing review. It takes us about a week, so we're tracking that. I mean, one of the things that I feel is probably the biggest advantage that we have is because these processes are integrated and they are very repeated. This is where the opportunity I see we have in India, which is you can really start thinking about what of which one of those areas that we can automate. So we also have integrated sort of software teams that are trying to really figure out which parts of, like, let's say coordination, or if you are producing like panelized shop drawings, what parts of that process could be automated. So we're keeping track of like those types of metrics so that we could do things a lot faster than what we were able to do just last year, for example.
And does the approach change between, now since you mentioned software as well as your hard deliveries of drawings and models? Is there a difference between the two in terms of how you're tracking them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the user stories in software kind of are different. I think you need to really understand the personas to build something. But what has been great is because we have done the process repeatedly, people are familiar with it. And our we have a group there called we're calling it the labs group, which is embedded into all these different teams, and the different teams have people embedded in that team. and what they are really trying to figure out is the workflow and the automation. So those are like products we are building, internal products. Actually, some of those products we are making available. I mean, you can go, for example, and download this Nirman product on the Autodesk marketplace today. It helps you do, I mean, essentially, if you are doing repeated 4D modeling, you can essentially start from a 3D model and create a work breakdown structure, and then produce a schedule based on the quantities that are in the building information model. So we released that product, but that, I mean, happened because we did 1,001 of those, before, right, and trying to sort of learn from it. So we're trying to really go from being kind of just services to what can we do by developing products that I think could be useful, not just for us, but for the industry.
Understood. Hemendra, any metrics you guys are tracking in particular that helps you to make sure your product is continuing to stay on top?
Yeah, I mean the most important metric is other than the business and company stuff. It's how do we keep our customers happier, okay, and how do we deliver increased value to each one of like Atul and Abhijit and thousands of like that. So number one, I always say is that whether our users or customers are using the product or not, which is pretty much adoption metric. I mean, you can buy it, but if you're not using it, that's so the huge focus on adoption and what is coming in the way, right? Whether it's a usability, the solutions are usable. So two things that we focus a lot on: the product quality, as well as the usability. I'll put it in the same category basically, but it's good product, and users find it quite usable, right? So the most of the metrics are related to that. That's number one. Second is, I would say, the responsiveness, which is it's a software. There are always going to be issues, right? But the most important thing is once our users and customers report the issue, how fast you can come back basically. And it's not even about solving the problem and finding it's about you understand the problem, right? And you have the empathy with customers. So I think those responsiveness, that's the second set of metrics about our first time to or the time to respond to the first response, and time to provide update, and how much is the end-to-end turnaround time, right? Those are two key criteria. Now, and the third one, actually there are two more, which is probably now recent with AI, and especially I would say a little bit more to do with India. I mean, the India Development Center provides us a huge, I think it's a different environment. I mean, you're building, I think previous panel was talking about how do you build solutions for low bandwidth and Android rather than iOS, and there's huge personalization. It's not really one giant homogeneous market like in US. It's a very specific, whether it's India or Europe or Australia, they're different, right? So the talent that we have, I think they have a lot more empathy to that. So a lot of those ideas come from the team, which probably if I were sitting in US, I would not realize those that quite often. So how many of those solutions which are helping to the global customer base are coming from the team? So that's another one. The other one I look at the leapfrog, which is thanks to AI now, how you are rethinking about the entire solution, and some of the working with the customers about looking at or revisiting the workflows and what's going to change, right? So providing those capabilities. I think those four categories, and then there are KPIs on those four categories that we track.
Understood. So Atul, I'll come back to you since you also spoke about the teams, right? And maybe Abhijit, you will also be a perfect place to answer this one. So when you're looking at a team structure or an organization structure, what is the ideal thing that has worked for you? Is it building teams functionally or building teams vertically? Like, do you just say you have a large engineering team that supports everyone, or do you split that team into, I will stack it vertically, saying, okay, this particular team serves this region of our operations, and this particular team serves that region of our operations. So we have multiple stacks. What's your model today?
Yeah, so I think the model, I would say the best way to probably describe it is sort of cross-functional, Chaitanya. I mean, originally what we started off with was, we had a VDC team that was separate than what I would call sort of people providing functions on, project controls, like, change order management or other stuff. And we eventually just merged that into a cross-functional team that is, we are calling essentially a virtual building team. So anything we do, we want to utilize as much of the virtual building technologies as possible. We sort of want to be known as kind of the virtual builders, and helping use the construction technologies to sort of really change the way projects get delivered. So now, like, it's very much embedded into everything that we do. Having said that, I mean, we do have specialized functions. So we do have, a software solutions team. We have the labs team, for example, that are working on. And again, these are embedded sort of, mixed teams which have representation from, somebody who's an expert in pre-construction or estimation or things like that, paired up with, somebody who's in the software development or AI ML kind of a space. So we also have that. And then I think you have to organize, the teams based on, I mean, if you're supporting projects, a lot of our projects are in the US, they're also in Europe. So you have to have some kind of a regional focus. So what we have found useful is we have somebody that is local in India that has that regional focus. But we also have somebody local in the US that they can coordinate with, and then they coordinate across all the sort of the disciplines. So that's how we have it. That's how we find that the most valuable. And I think I mean, the key to everything is I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I think communication, constant communication. I think I was glad to hear Abhijit say, like, they get on the calls every other day or whatever, 2 times, 3 times a week. I mean, sometimes it's every day, like morning and afternoon. I mean, that's our life. But I think it's that communication is very key. So.
And Atul, you also handle multiple types of projects, right? So you have different kinds of projects that you're dealing. So is it also bifurcation by the type of project that you're dealing, data centers versus hospitals versus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so we definitely have people who, at least in the US, who are like specialized in different types of work. I mean, so like, I mean, my operations background is in like mission critical as well as life sciences and healthcare. So out of the 5 core markets that DPR does, I've worked in 3. It doesn't mean I couldn't do the other 2. I think one of the reasons we have the 5 core markets is that I mean, they tend to be very similar in terms of the complexity of the systems, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, and the type of work that we do on those projects. So there's probably less of a specialization in the services group in what we provide. Although there are, I mean, nuances. If you are doing a FDA validated life sciences project, obviously it's going to be different than a mission critical project which is running 24/7 kind of a thing. So I mean, all they want is volume of work that needs to be done. So yeah, I think there's differences, but we are not organizing like teams specifically for that, because the skills you need to serve any one of our core markets are very similar from what services you provide to those.
Yeah, I would agree to what Chaitanya, what Atul mentioned. So at Turner, we have now a special group called which focuses on the group we called is Advanced Technology Group, ATG. This group now only focuses on data center, EV battery plant, and pharma. And I would say this year company's portfolio is almost 40%, right? You see a lot of boom in terms of data center. So what we are doing, Chaitanya, is we are following both structure, horizontal and vertical, but it depends on what the project requirement is, right? Because we follow a vertical, say hierarchy or an organizational structure where there are similar projects, right? So that you can optimize on process. There are standardization that you can lean on. But yeah, when it comes to other projects, then we do follow an horizontal approach.
Understood. And just to kind of continue on this, Avijit, and then I'll go to Hemendra also. So how do you ensure, that the knowledge does not stay siloed in your, regional offices or in the, and how does it actually get transferred effectively? Because I think even in my past experiences, communication, like Atul mentioned, is very key, important, right? And that knowledge
Right.
transfer, because of maybe lack of context or anything else, could be missed
That's
out. So how do you ensure that that communication is very clear and the knowledge actually is getting transferred so that the team can perform?
That's a good question. So Chaitanya, I'll the kind of structure we have is back in states. We have now, based on the different region, we have 4 integration managers, right? These are now the point of contact for different business unit, and their partners here are the operation managers for those different business center. The all the integration manager, they have worked in US for say probably 15 plus years, either on site or in the office, right? They were here. What we did is, for this to be sustainable, we identified a group of people. They trained them, right? So now we are trying to imply a trainer, right? So they were here for almost a week. They trained almost 20 people. Now our goal is those 20 people will now train another 40 people, right? That's how, because the demand is very high, right? Soon, I think we will be double in size. So I think training plays a very important part.
Yeah, agreed. Hivendra, is there anything different on the product side?
No, I think as Atul said, the core of this is communication, and as long as
Right.
we have constant communication between different groups, it solves a lot of problems. Really, now we have Zoom meetings, but I think there's nothing beats the face-to-face interactions. That's where we build reputation. So we focus a lot on bringing people on site, or on-site or off-site, however you want to say that, right? But bringing the whole teams together, frequent. I mean, sometimes quarterly, sometimes once in 6 months, or when project starts, right? So that the whole team comes together. They spend weeks, couple of weeks, get to know each other, and then I think the organization structure or organization is organized in such a way that every team knows why are they doing it before, like if they're building something, why are they building it, who is it for, what problem is going to solve before you write a single line of code, right? For an example, we have a core shared services or platform group, and they know that if they are building these common components for all the solutions teams, which basically we divide between the core shared services and the solutions. And again, when we go to solutions, we have like for GCs, for owners, for specialty contractors, or even sometimes we are building a solutions, which happens quite less. But let's say there's a regional flavor all the time, as you mentioned, right? I mean, things are different in Europe than in US, slightly different, right? So, but as long as the goals are clear about what are we doing and why are we doing it and for whom, and then we try to make sure that everybody's super clear about it. And then I think, as I said, nothing beats the face in person.
Yeah.
That's number one thing.
Definitely, I think that's common for our industry also. The handshake is much more important.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that we
yeah.
have so many Zoom calls, and then sometimes people sit together in a room for a couple of hours, and they make so many decisions in 2 hours that would have taken them a couple of weeks.
And Chaitanya, I 200% agree with Atul and Hemendra, right? I would say it's over communication because let's assume, right? Today in India, in states, right, we are talking about an average distance of say 10.5 hours, right? So if you don't communicate well, right, if you don't ask the right question at the right time, you are losing a day, right? Probably more, right? And it is going to impact the project, right? Or that task. So I think over communication is better rather than less communication.
Great, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the sync with that. I want to ask the last question. I think this is my favorite question of the panel, and I think everyone in the audience would love it. So, if you were starting today, would you still choose India? And what is the advice you would give to a global firm considering this as an option? Anyone who would like to go in first may jump in, please.
I can go first. I would say yes, definitely yes. I would still choose India. Today, India is just not a cost saving advantage, I would say. People needs to look at it from a capacity building perspective, scalability, and I would say sustainability, right? We have achieved a lot of success, and I can see uh, see a value in why global firms can do it. And I would say we should look at major advantages let's assume time difference, right? It's a huge advantage, right? We are now on a 24/7 cycle, right? There are some things done by our US team. When we come online in the morning, we take, and so it is 24/7 cycle, right? Then it, as I think Mahendra mentioned, right? The focus should be on outcome, right? It should not be on hourly saving or any kind of small things, but outcome with is what will matter at the end of the day. And yeah, then I would say third thing will be invest in leadership. You need a strong leadership both in US or any part of the country, and you need a strong local leadership here who is ready, understands what is the requirement, what is the expectation, and then grow the team locally.
I would also like, actually, I am 10 times more convinced now compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago that India is the right place to build those teams. And not just because uh, you have the bigger talent and the speed is faster and it's hubs for international market, but just the sheer market size. Now it has challenges, but now if you look at it, I think it's building highest number of highways in India, more than China, right? I mean, I was in India, by the way, for 2 weeks, just last week, and it's just amazing. One, it's a huge market potentially. I mean, it may take a year, 2 years, 3 years. Data centers, we just had an announcement last week when I was there. Um, uh, it's just the sheer market, the potential. And the other things that I realize now that sometimes, um, actually, I think in India, it's an advantage to now build solutions for India because you can leapfrog literally. I mean, if you're not using solutions, now you can build really custom solutions, the modern solutions for the world, basically, right? So I am actually a lot more convinced, or I would suggest anybody who's starting that if they are in construction technology or built asset segment, we should. This is a huge opportunity for them to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chaitanya, I would echo the same thing. I think my advice would be don't look at India as kind of a cost arbitrage. I think it's a much more strategic role that it is playing for us, and I think that's also a lesson learned for us is not to look at it that way. I think I mean, India is a young country. I think probably the youngest country on the planet. I think. I mean, every time I come to India, it's just an unbelievable talent that I see, unbelievable, I think people have hunger. I think technology has been completely democratized with whatever you want to do. So I think we should have bigger ambitions than just sort of, being a support function for the world, I feel.
That's right. And Chaitanya, to add on, right? We probably every year, right? We go to campus, hire graduate either from bachelor or masters, right? I have seen people grown in leadership position in say 4 or 5 years, right? This is a big opportunity for the talent, right? It's not about just uh, kicking the boss, getting assignment done or getting project done. It also shows you that there is a lot of leadership, right? If you have the right mindset, right approach, uh, then this it's sky is the limit for everyone.
Excellent. That's a great way to now enter into question and answer. I think there are a lot of questions that have come through. So if they can share a question, let's see. All right. So the first one says, despite Autodesk Construction Cloud offering a broader set of advanced features, why does Proper continue to sustain strong adoption and market presence among construction firms? And Atul, Abhijit, how are you looking at these advancements of platforms? Okay, so maybe first Hemendra, then we'll go to Atul and Abhijit.
Well, I mean, okay. Thanks for the feedback. I think it's even though I'm like 2 years, but I've known Procore for many years from outside. I've seen it from outside as well as inside, both. And I think the core project management solutions is it's just easy to use. It's a great solution. It's really, I mean, some of the NPS scores are as high as some you can look at iPhone, basically. And it's the customer centricity. What I've seen, this is the one company that focuses a lot. I mean, most of the solutions are built in consultation with the customers and collaboration with them, right? So that's the one. It all focuses about solving the customer pain point. That's the one area. And now, if you look at it, the breadth of solution in last couple of years, you can see it's other than the authoring part of it, it provides the end-to-end solution as well. So yeah, love to continue to. I know that there are multiple other players, but I hope Abhijit can talk about that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I think Abhijit, for you, that part was, how are you looking? How are your teams looking at these advancements in platforms, and maybe how are you adopting them?
Yeah, so we use both of them, right? I don't know to be biased, but yeah, I think on all the Turner projects, Procore is, I think, a default go-to partner, and same with Autodesk Construction Cloud. I think the key element here is one size does not fit all, right? There are pros and cons when I would say there are some things that Procore does better versus an ACC, right? So it's all based on what the customer need is and what the company is able to provide.
I think, Chaitanya, I mean, I would like to answer this more from a project lifecycle perspective. I mean, I think what, VDC, BIM, AI, I think what it's forcing is essentially a compression of the life cycle from design to fabrication and construction. And I think we need to look at solutions from that perspective. Not a single tool does that soup to nuts today. And so we have to look at sort of solutions that do that. I think we had an interesting conversation on C Tribe, I think, if you remember, about context, the missing SaaS tools. And you can see like the market value being wiped out from the SaaS tools because of that. So I think there's a lot that we can unpack. I mean, you could probably dedicate like a whole session just on this topic. But I think, both Autodesk and Procore are providing essentials, tools that are necessary for project delivery today. And I think where the value is kind of the integration across project lifecycle. And I think that's where, if you look at, strategy, I think, Hemendra, I think your strategy, I know Sid and Autodesk, what they're trying to accomplish, it's similar, like, try and serve that, project lifecycle kind of a view. So,
yep. And I think that's a great point. I would add to that, actually. And it's not just design and the planning, right? I mean, lot of the overall spend is after the construction, right? So that even increases the whole space that we need to operate on. And I 100% agree. I mean, I haven't seen any GC or owner using one solution. I mean, they generally choose what fits at what life cycle or what type of project. So, and there's enough room for many players to play at the same time.
Absolutely. All right. Next question is, for a major Indian project, how do you enforce the behavioral change required for lean construction when the site culture is traditionally top-down and hierarchical? So I think maybe, Abhijit, I think it'll be more relevant for you because you also have some India operations, if you have anything to add on this.
Sure. So Chaitanya, I would say this is a cultural shift, right? Lean, when I was in state, right? I think couple of years back, right? Turner has embedded lean as its culture, right? Which is not the same. We try to implement a lot of lean principles onto Indian projects, but we still face challenges because I would say there is a lot of resistance, and people are not very adaptable to the lean type of construction. Whereas in US, they know the value, right? I would say eventually it will change. Like let's assume 10 years, and Atul, I would say will agree with me, right? 10 years back, right? BIM VDC owners, client were looking at it from a cost heavy perspective. They were not looking at it from a value proposition. Today things have changed, right? Lot of Indian projects, right, are coming to us and they are saying that we want at least few, like at least clash coordination to be in the standard contract. I think, yeah, overall it will change, but it will take some time. That's my 2 cents.
Got it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's just how construction anyways operates. And then, whenever new things come in, it takes time to push it all the way down with the kind of level of stakeholders that we have involved. As a last question, because we are on time. So what has been your biggest failure or lesson learned while building teams in India? I think, each one of you can go through one by one. Maybe we'll start with Atul and then we'll go in, alphabetical order. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I already mentioned, I think lesson learned for me is take a much more sort of integrated approach versus a cost focus approach. I think focus a lot on culture and building that one team globally. I think that is going to go a long way. So that's how I would answer that. And there's not a failure. I didn't like the word failure in there. I think it's just what I would like to emphasize more. So
yeah,
I would echo what Atul said, right? Is the culture, right? And how do you ensure that the team member feels empowered, right? It's not a task-based job, right? How do you ensure that the US counter, and it's also a mind shift change, right? Rather than a task-based approach, right? So your point of contact in States versus a team member in India, right? How the growth, responsibility, the step progression of that individual becomes the owners, not only the Indian leadership, but also it becomes an owners for the point of contact in US too.
Now, I'll agree with to that. I think the biggest thing is the culture and the mindset, and that's a very soft topic. It just does not happen because we said that. It's you have to hire and
Right.
people with that kind of mindset. So one of the quote that one of the learning I had from one of the vice person company is he was mentioning how they built the development center in India many years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And he said that it took 1 year for them to hire 30 people. 1 year. And they purposely did that because they wanted to make sure that they hire absolutely the right people. And once
Right.
they did that right, rest 300 people, it's like they could hire them.
All in place. Yeah.
Right. So that's about how do you make sure that you have absolutely no compromise to the culture and the mindset that you want. And if you have that, I think everything is fine.
Excellent. That's a very great way to end this session for today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your opinions and thoughts. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did too. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
yeah,
Same
thank
here.
you, Chaitanya.
Thanks, Chetan. Thanks,
Abhi.
Amanda. Thanks, Atul. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chaitanya, and all the panelists from the second session. Again, just a quick appreciation and thank you for all our panelists, all our attendees for joining in, and a quick shout out to all our sponsors, Shuko India, AID, International ConTech, PropTech Consulting, AEC Tech Jobs, Cognito Consulting, DigiQC. Again, thank you so much for supporting the event. Just a quick note, all the videos will be out on YouTube. You could also watch the entire day highlight videos on LinkedIn as well. And as part of our post event, we would post a lot of content around both day one and day two and some of the learnings that we had from all of the 4 sessions. So make sure you check out our LinkedIn as well for consistent updates. We would also love to hear some feedback if you have any regarding these sessions as we try to, host more of these. We would like to hear any ideas that you might have, and we'll obviously accommodate that in our future sessions. Again, thank you so much from Constructing Tomorrow, Last Week in Contact, and C Tribe. Until then, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.